Absolutely.
Great. So first, we would just like for you to tell us more about your personal and professional background, how you got to where you are, and how you first became interested in the entrepreneurship, startups, venture capital space.
Sure. So I am from Baltimore, Maryland, originally. I explain it to people in the way that I grew up in the neighborhood where The Wire was filmed. So I'm one of 5 siblings. Really, there weren't that many opportunities in my community for growth in a legal way. There are plenty of jobs out there, but most of them weren't legal. I was really too chicken to do that and wanted a different path and wanted my own autonomy. So I watched a lot of television. I watched a lot of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, interestingly enough, where they would talk about Princeton all the time. And so as a kid, I always said, I want to go to Princeton. I didn't know anything about it. Did more research as I got older, realized Princeton wasn't the best fit for me, but found my home at Brown. So at Brown, I studied chemistry and business. The business degree at Brown is called Business Entrepreneurship and Organizational Studies. While I was there, I really developed a passion for not only the work that I was doing at my lab bench, but figuring out how to commercialize some of those things and how to bring product to market. So at the time, I actually worked for a nonprofit that I ended up leading, which was a sexual education nonprofit, which was really my first taste of entrepreneurship and managing teams. Where we were the sole provider of comprehensive sexual education throughout Providence Public Schools during my tenure. Unfortunately, we're able to teach thousands of children every year through the program. That's really how I got my taste there. So I knew that I was always really interested in sexual education, healthcare, and health tech, and biotech. And I wasn't really sure how to use all those things combined. Like most people who go to Brown, I thought I was going to be pre-med and realized that wasn't exactly what I wanted to do in reality. And I was being mentored by someone who worked in private equity at the time, and they were working on a sexual wellness deal in private equity. And they asked me, hey, do you want to help me do research on this deal? I had no idea what private equity was or VC or anything like that. But I agreed to do research, which I now know is diligence on this deal. And then I began doing more diligence for them kind of part-time while I was in college. Thought private equity was pretty cool. Did that full-time post-graduation, realized private equity is not the fit for me. I don't really love to wake up every morning and think that I have to fire a bunch of people. But I really enjoyed the idea of working closely with executives to help them build and grow something. So I did a little growth equity and then realized that there were some microaggressions that I was experiencing and my peers were experiencing at the firms where we were. And I really was uncomfortable sometimes with the implicit biases that I was noticing were being presented in the way we discussed our entrepreneurs in deals on our investment committee. And I really wanted to change that. So I had known the partners of Lightship Capital for quite some time, independent before Lightship happened. One partner was a great lobbyist and the founder of the Hillman Accelerator and did some really incredible work on increasing spaces for minority entrepreneurship across the Midwest. So I had known her from a lobbying side, and the other partner was a CEO of a company called Kairos that I almost invested in. I didn't know they even knew each other, to be honest with you, but one day I got a phone call from one of the partners, and he said, 2 things are happening. The first thing is I'm getting married to a woman that I think you know. And the second thing is we're going to start a venture fund together, and we want you to come along for the ride. So I was crazy enough to say yes to joining a venture fund that hadn't raised a dime. I don't even think our docs were submitted yet in terms of formation, but it was something that we all felt really passionate about. Was we kept seeing, either through their own experiences as founders or my experience as an investor, founders of color and women and members of the queer community were not being seen the same way as other founders were. And so we created Lightship together, really. And the rest is history.
Amazing. Yeah, I love the mission here and how you've been able to learn from your experiences and working in other industries and in private equity and bring that to the table with Lightship Capital. I do want to ask you, like, because you mentioned you dealt frequently with microaggressions in the private equity space, how did you combat those when you're working in that area, and what are you doing now through Lightship that you think helps to combat those in a larger scale?
Yeah, the things I was doing at that firm were I was incredibly vocal. I had a boss who was incredibly supportive of me and the things that I wanted to do, and really gave me the room to say what I had to say when I needed to say it. So there would be times where you were on an investment committee, and there would be, a female founder presented, and that woman would be described as moody and erratic or naggy. And these were never words that were used for people who didn't identify as women on committee, right? Or someone of, a Black person who is from a less prominent neighborhood. They would, well, I would always be the person to say on committee or via email right after, this is not okay. We're not looking at these founders the same way. How are we going to fix it? Unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of action about other people wanting to fix it outside of myself. But I really, that's why I left. I figured if I couldn't fix it there, I'll go build it myself. Every founder deserves the same chance to build the best companies they can. And if that place wasn't the home for it, I'll make a new home. So the short answer is I was loud and obnoxious.
Yeah,
That's really
so
what it is.
tell me more about what you're doing now in your current role. And for those of you on this call who don't know, provide a little bit more context about what your overall mission is and how you work to achieve that at Lightship.
Sure. So Lightship Capital is the largest female-led fund designed for underrepresented founders. So for us, that is people who don't identify as men, members of the BIPOC community, members of the LGBTQ plus community, people with disabilities, and immigrants and refugees. For us, we know for a fact that less than 10% of funding goes to women, less than 2% of funding goes to Black people. And as an investor, less than 1% of venture capitalists look like me. And so with everything that we've done in terms of building the fund, we've thought about all of those things and how do we increase access to all and break down these barriers. So things that we're doing, we have an open application process. Anyone and everyone is able to apply for funding through our fund. We've banned warm intros as a team. If you ever think you're sending a warm intro to a deal to our team, that deal still has to go through the application process. It doesn't matter if it came from our favorite co-investor. It's also really important to us that we look at every single deal. We ask a bunch of information when you apply, but when we review deals, a lot of that information is blind to us. I don't see your name. I don't see where you're from. I don't see really any information on the back end, although we have it. All I'm looking at is the deal. I don't care where you went to school. I don't care about any of these other things. How do I just see that? We're also really intentional about the that we create. We also make sure that we're creating spaces where people can come in and talk to us, get advice from us. So we have a pitch competition on Twitch that is open to everyone and all to watch. It's called Twitch Pitch, and anyone is able to apply for that. It's not, we're not trying to gatekeep and only have office hours for 3 founders a month. It's really about how do we increase access to all, and we try to be really open in terms of being reached out to, mentorship, funding. Access is key, so we're just trying to break down a lot of these barriers.
Yeah, I think that is certainly in stark contrast to how a lot of VC funds run now, where deal flow is primarily based off of interaction that you've had with friends, co-investors, other people that you know. That is just like, for many firms, the sole source sometimes of deals. So I really admire how you've been able to try to eliminate those biases by having these blind application processes. But I think like one of the things that I would like to dig into is, because a lot of the information on the back end now is not available to you at front, what do you look for in founders in these companies, and how have you developed this investing strategy, particularly in context of having worked at more traditional private equity firms and now trying to kind of switch the paradigm at Lightship? How has your investing strategy evolved through that experience?
Yeah, what it means is that I'm a hella strict modeler. I'm incredibly conservative in terms of my modeling in comparison to most of my peers who come from just a more traditional venture or startup background. Um, so that's kind of the more logistical detail that's different. But what it means for me is I have the ability to not only see a deal from a venture exit perspective, I also have a really clear path to seeing things from potential private equity exit, which sometimes is difficult for other folks to grasp. And what's the second part of that question? It was a two-parter and I got distracted. I was reading the chat box.
Yeah, kind of like how that has evolved from your past experience. Has it been difficult adjusting to having a blind deal screening process?
It has not been difficult for me in my prior life. That's how I was sourcing my deals anyway. I wrote a blog post a while ago about how much I hate golf clubs and country clubs because that whole networking world, I never felt like I fit in, even though I had to participate. It never really sat right with me. So I always did a lot of outbound sourcing on my own. I always did a lot of just, networking outside of those traditional vehicles, digitally reaching out to people online. So I always did that. And the things that I'm looking for now that may be a little different than before is, in terms of founders, the number one thing that I'm looking for is coachability. I invest at the seed and series A stage, which means we're here together. This is a marriage. We're in this for the long haul. And so I really want to know, one, do we get along? Because we're here for anywhere between 3 and 7 years together. And two, are you coachable? Our team is really, really lucky that we have great access to Fortune 100 executives and companies that provide strategic guidance to our portfolio companies. But that only works if they're willing to take the advice and the mentorship. So coachability is the number one thing I'm looking for. The other thing that I really like is I love to invest in experts in their space. My most recent investment is in the food tech space. I don't know anything about oil polymers, but that person does. He's an expert in that field, and I love that because then I can help him continue to build and scale. I don't have to learn the book of polymers because I trust that he knows that and he can lead his team on that end. So that's what I'm looking for from founders. For companies, I really want something scalable. I want something generally that's category defining, something I've never seen before. And I'm looking for something that's going to leave a positive impact on the world. I know, of course, I'm looking for returns, aren't we all? That's boring. But really, I want to make sure that all of the deals that I do, I can feel comfortable sleeping at night that they're scalable. There's a lot of industries I won't touch. You won't really see me do anything in alcohol or weaponry or nicotine related products or things that aren't environmentally sustainable because I want to make sure that we're building good things for the future.
Yeah, so we got a question more about the deal screening process that you do at Lightship, and that was, are there any benefits or downsides to that process? And can you speak to the pros and cons relative to the more traditional VC deal flow and deal screening process?
The benefit is definitely that it helps me remove some of my biases. Like, I know that I have a strong, and I can say this here, it's unfortunate, but I have a strong Ivy League bias, and I try to work really hard to mitigate that. And so leaving those parts about team outside of me looking at a deck originally really helps me with that. Also, just recognizing that it's a problem is a big part of it, and I'm working through that with my team. In terms of downsides, honestly, the downside is that it takes longer. If I just sourced from my friends in VC, I could have deals done in a couple of weeks. But because I'm going through everyone, it is a big time. It's time consuming on my end, but I think it's worth it because there's so many great gems that come out of just our application pool that I wouldn't have seen otherwise because we're not in the same personal networks.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And certainly it seems like the kind of process that, well, it may be more time consuming on the front end. On the returns end, you might be getting introduced to new founders that you wouldn't have been introduced to before. And in the long run, that's better for the firm. It's a better use of your time. So I love that model that you have. And I think it's really interesting for me to hear that. And I'm sure for our audience too, in comparison with some of the other VC firms that we've had experience with. Now, I want to pass it on to Lola to tackle a bunch of questions that she had come up with too.
Awesome.
Hi, Alexis. So,
Hi.
like she said, I do also have a couple of questions. So, I want to just start off with just a regular formal conversation starter. So, I know it's a lot being on social media and everything, that a constant conversation that comes up just as a regular like banter between HBCUs, PWIs. I'm pretty sure Ivies have their own little like, oh, this and that kind of competitive thing. So, what would you say are like your thoughts on that between like going to attending an HBCU or attending a PWI? Because I go to Morgan State University, so that's a
Hmm.
historically black college or university, and a PWI is just like a predominantly white institution. So, what are your thoughts on that, and how was your experience at Brown University?
Oh, not that question. Oh no. No, if I'm being super real, if I'm being super honest with everybody, I don't think that one is better than the other. I think it depends on what experience you're looking to have while you're at college, and what do you want, what opportunities do you want open for you post graduation. So for me, it was somewhat logistical. I didn't want to go to school anywhere near my home, even though I'm from Baltimore, and I didn't want to go to school. I wanted to go to school in New England, and I knew that, which limited the bucket for of HBCUs just in terms of geography. But also for me, I knew that, to be really honest with you guys, I knew that I needed money to go to school, and I got almost full rides from the Ivy Leagues to got into because it's based on income. In terms of my personal experience at Brown, I had a tumultuous experience in terms of finding community and finding my home there. I ended up working a lot while I was an undergrad because I had to still keep food on the table, even though most of my tuition was paid for. And so I struggled to find home. I found home in musical theater, but outside of that, I was never super connected to the Brown ecosystem. I always say if you want to go to an HBCU, go for it. There are definitely parts of community and the experience of college that I wish I had, that I 100% could have gotten at an HBCU. So I had friends who went to, Morgan State, Spelman, Howard, Morehouse for the men, who just had really great community building experiences and lifelong connections that I never had, that I do sometimes wish that I had. But I think it just depends on, what you're going to school for. I went to school to um, really like push, the envelope on what I could build in science and business, and really to just go to school relatively free. Um, so that's the decision I made. I don't regret it, but there's a lot of value in an HBCU experience that I do wish I had. And to be honest with you, when I was in high school, I used to sneak out to Howard all the time. I had a bunch of friends in DC. I used to sneak out and go party there. So I did miss it, and there are great things there.
Have you ever
But
been to
I
Howard?
wouldn't.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, no, no. You're good. You're good. Have I been to what?
Howard's homecoming, since you've been over there.
Absolutely, absolutely,
Really
absolutely a party. I would come down from Brown too when I was in school, to go to homecoming.
okay.
See, Brown doesn't have homecoming. We don't even have like a real band or anything.
I mean, everybody has. I know. I'm pretty sure Brown has their own like amazing things that go on there though. HBCUs just love homecoming, I guess. But so we have a question actually from the audience. So they asked, how can we address discrimination against our colleagues without negatively affecting their or our careers, especially specifically in the VC industry? So venture.
um, I'm gonna be really honest here and say, in my experience, I've always felt as though I had to be willing to risk potential career advancement for the good of the people. So there are definitely times where I butted heads with superiors about processes and biases, and I knew that for sometimes I was perceived less favorably by those people afterwards, but I just had to suck it up. because to me that was more important than immediate career progression, because I knew in the long run there was going to be a larger benefit to the greater community by me standing up and saying the things that I said or implementing the policies that I did. I'm sorry, it's probably not a great answer, but I just think you have to be willing for there to be a potential risk, that people won't see value in what you're trying to create or mitigate.
So you're definitely for being like able to like be yourself, be able to take risk and everything, not really playing it safe, especially when it comes to like career growth and just, liking what you do.
Yeah, I think you have to be willing to take a risk and be yourself. That's why I think it was so important for me to eventually leave my previous firm and go create something on my own, because I knew I had to be in a place where I could be me. I don't think it really serves any of us long term by trying to fit ourselves into a mold and trying to, make sure everyone else is happy and not ruffle any feathers. We have to ruffle some feathers sometimes, like no one else is going to say these things or make change. It has to come from us. So we have to be willing to take the risk.
Um, okay, yeah, I definitely agree with that because being someone that's not even genuine is not really favorable, especially in this climate of like diversity and inclusion. What's the point of hiring someone who's supposed to have all of these like great ideas, but they're just, just being a yes person or just,
Mm-hmm.
being safe? That's not what they hired you for. They want you to be different. They want you to speak out and really bring those new ideas. So
And
another
also
question,
keep in mind, you're always a beacon for the next person to come after you.
yeah.
Right. So you may have an intern sitting in the corner who wants to be their true self and wants to speak out against things and build product or services that are, going to improve the lives of others, but they may not feel comfortable doing it if they don't see you doing it. So you have to be that torch. You have to be that light.
I like that. Oh, okay. So actually have another question. So, what advice do you have for founders looking to raise capital for their startups?
It depends on the founder, or not. It depends on the stage of the founder. Most founders, my answer would be traction, traction, traction. Go build, go get revenue, go prove that product market fit. Um, I always say, even if you only have 2 dimes, that you can scrape together, build some sort of an MVP, even if it's on paper, even if there's no tech back into it, and go out there and prove that the market really wants what you're building. That's the best way to show value to VC. And then the second part of that, the more, I guess, direct answer to that is build a network. We're in a position right now with COVID-19 where nobody is expecting in-person meetings. Take advantage of it. You don't have to spend 6 months doing a roadshow flying across the country to meet with VCs, especially if you live outside of the valley. You don't have to do that now. You can get Zoom meetings with these people. Take advantage. Go on LinkedIn, search people with venture capital in their title, look for the firms that are doing things in your sector, your industry, and your stage. You can use Crunchbase, you can use PitchBook. There are a ton of resources out there, and go say hello, introduce yourself, get on the calendar.
Uh, Actually, thank you for that advice. I actually have one question that just came to me. I was actually thinking, with your like career and venture capital, like what is probably one maybe like a major mistake or a minor mistake that just surprisingly had a really good result that you made, and would you mind sharing about
Um, a mistake. I would say, um, I would say probably joining this firm as early as I did. I joined the firm with no money in the bank. That's it's really tough and risky to join a venture firm that hasn't raised the fund yet. Most of them fail. And so, sometimes it was scary. Sometimes I was questioning if it was the right decision to do. Should I have just stayed in private equity? And in general, everyone talks about private equity pays more and it's a better status symbol. Sometimes that got in my head, but it absolutely paid off well. I don't want to do private equity. I'm building what I love with the people that I really care about, and it was a great decision. Even if it took a year for us to fundraise, it was worth it.
Yeah, I definitely think being able to like have your start your own thing and really be able to build something from the ground up is way more fulfilling than just going straight for the money or like whatever every.
Absolutely.
But I have another question. So what is something you wish you had known prior to becoming an investor?
I wish I had known that most of us don't know what we're doing. We're really good at, no, I'm serious. I'm serious. We're really good at PR. We're really good at social media. I'm terrible at social media. I just started it this summer and I hate it. And we're really good at talking a big game about how good we are as investors. But most of us are just winging it. There's no formula for this. There's no secret to having great exits. Everyone thinks they have a formula, but none of it's real. We're all just guessing.
Let me see if I could look through, see if any of our listeners have any questions for you right now. Oh, okay. So I see a good one. A lot of minority, female, or immigrant run startups tend to struggle in the pitching stage, be it by being judged more critically, having less experience in the pitch process, or unconscious bias on the part of the VCs themselves. How can they overcome these potential hurdles?
So, people who look like me struggle a lot, first of all, with imposter syndrome, which is something that I'm working on still. I think it's really important that when we go into any meeting, we understand that we know what we're doing, we're the experts in what we're doing, we go in confidently, and we don't let anyone bring us down. One. The second thing is a lot of it, unfortunately, is just unconscious bias, right? There's a lot of unconscious bias surrounding women in particular, people assuming, oh, she's going to have kids, she's not going to be serious about this startup, or she's going to go get married and she's not going to be serious about it. There's a bunch of weird things that go on in some people's heads about our ability to lead the next unicorn and our desire to lead the next unicorn. And the third thing is we have to remember our value, and we have to just remember if the VC doesn't see that, they're not the VC for us. A lot of us really try to get, oh, well, maybe if I pitch this or I change this in the deck, if they're not seeing your value from the start, get out of the room. You're wasting your time. Move on. It's not the relationship you want.
Yeah, because you definitely don't want to lose your authenticity just because you want to impress a certain VC or anything. Okay,
Hmm.
so let's see what else we got. What have you learned from your bad investment decisions that you apply to your new decision making process?
Um, wow, there's a hyper specific one, and I'm going to try not to use that one because it's easily Googleable. Um, I've learned that it's very, very important for you and the founder to have a good relationship. Um, Sometime in my past, I've struggled with, really wanting to get the deal done and like almost pulling teeth to get more information out of the founder. And now I know that the founders who aren't kind of my cheerleader, I want to be their cheerleader, I want them to be my cheerleader. If we don't have that kind of close knit relationship early on, it's not going to work out. We're not going to see eye to eye with you. We're not going to value each other in the same way that we should. And it makes it difficult to grow together. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, so one last question from our audience. What are the best questions to ask a founder during an initial pitch call?
Ooh. So I always ask about traction, first of all. I always ask about, what are the metrics are you hitting? I always want to know, what do they see for the future of their company? If you had unlimited cash, and I actually think I stole this question from Masayoshi Son from SoftBank. If you had unlimited cash and unlimited human resources, what would your company look like? What would you build? I ask about 5 years from now, what do you think this is going to look like? I want to make sure that we see the same long-term vision for the company, because just because you're growing super well doesn't mean that we see the same exit plan for you. So I want to make sure we're aligned with that. I also like to ask questions about how they work with their team. Are they someone who wants to do everything by themselves? Are they good at delegating? Do they feel like they have a support system around them? And then I ask everyone, what's your wish list? People think of venture capitalists, people who give money, but I'm also here to support you in other ways. So what's on your wish list? Who do you want connections to? Are there specific R&D channels that you need help with? Do you need help with FDA clearance? Do you need help with supply chain and logistics? What are the things that you really want to improve on or fix in your company? Give me that list and let me figure out how I can help you with that. Because I have to make sure that we're aligned in terms of my skills and my ability to help you grow. So that's also really important to me.
Alrighty, thank you so much for answering my questions. I know that I'm gonna pass it on to Georgia so that she can ask you a few of hers.
Anytime.
Yeah, thank you so much. This has all been super interesting and really helpful, especially I know we have a fair share of college students on the call as well. So just wanted to move to some questions specific to that and what it means to be a student, especially right now. So from our audience to start, someone had asked, you mentioned that you studied BEO and chemistry at Brown. What role do you think these courses of studies played in your ability to eventually get into VC? And how were your courses of study looked at when you were first getting into the VC space?
Oh, I'll tell you this now. When I first got my internship in PE, I think they were interested in the fact that I just had some sort of a quanti STEMmy background. For them, I don't think it really mattered which I had chosen. Um, but in terms of VC, I found that it's useful in that it's just different, if that makes any sense. There are a lot of people in my industry who come from, there's nothing wrong with this, that come from econ or they're ex-I bankers. And it just seems to be a lot of people have these very homogenous backgrounds. And so the fact that I have a more scientific lens of things, I think is useful and differentiates me a little bit from some other people in my space. What was the other part of that? I feel like I missed it again.
No, I think that was it. Mostly just like how did you choose your courses, I guess, to inform your course into venture capital, but it seems like with you it ended up
I
being
didn't.
just added
I
experience.
didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't. I wasn't thinking about VC when I was choosing my classes at all. I was thinking about pre-med. And then when I wasn't thinking about pre-med, I was thinking of getting my Pharma D, actually. So I wasn't thinking about VC at all. And I would advise everyone not to think about VC when they pick their courses. The best hires that I've ever made in my career were people who were super passionate about whatever it was they were passionate about and provided that sector expertise to my work. Those are my favorite hires, right? If you're super interested in physics and space and space travel, go do that, and then you could join a space tech fund, right? Your skill sets, no matter what they are, could be incredibly useful wherever you go. You'll just find the fund that invests in verticals that you're an expert in.
I think that's fantastic advice, not only on the founder side, but also in the investor side, wanting to lead with passion first. And from there, it sounds like things just fall into place. Obviously,
Absolutely.
with hard work alongside that.
With hard work and luck. Let's not be crazy. A lot of this is luck that I'm here. It's not just skilled. There are people much more skilled than me who aren't in my position. But yeah, do what makes you happy. Do what makes you happy.
Yeah, so I guess speaking of that, and something that really stuck out to me, which you said earlier in the call, was about how the world of like golf clubs and country clubs really can, in some cases, put people in a position of luck or privilege, whatever you want to call it, that does really give an unfair edge and often excludes underrepresented communities. So among the Black founders who do manage to receive funding, a large majority do not feel supported by the venture capital community as they're going on building their ventures. So how can
Hmm.
investors better support Black founders in their portfolio and work to dismantle these systems of exclusivity like the golf club trope we were talking about?
Yeah, we have to put our money where our mouth is. We can't complain about exclusive ecosystems and then continue to use crap like Clubhouse. Like, we just can't continue to do that, you know? We can't continue to talk about investing more into Black founders and then only providing mentor office hours for Black founders and not committing to writing checks to those founders. We don't need more mentors. That's not what we need. We need more checks. And so for a lot of us, what we have to do is listen to what our portfolio needs. Have an idea in my head of what I think you need to grow, but I need to hear from you and I need to stop and listen. What do you need? What can I do to support you? And it's not my job to push my philosophies of my hockey stick growth on you. I need to learn from you as well as to how we can do this together.
I love that. You couldn't have said it better. It's really important, and especially now more than ever, and writing those checks and getting more capital in the hands of Black founders and other founders from underrepresented groups, because we know right now more than 80% of venture firms don't have a single Black investor, and just 1% of venture funded startup founders are Black. So I know you talked about listening and the importance of tearing down some of those systems of exclusivity that are already in place, but what other advice or ideas do you have on how firms can actually work towards achieving diversity and inclusion in the workplace beyond just these virtue signaling efforts that
Yeah.
seem to
So I can talk about this literally for 10 days. I did a talk on this on our Twitch channel. It's on YouTube if anyone's curious. It's me ranting for 30 minutes about how VCs can be better because I was tired of people asking me about it. It starts with hiring. It's plain and simple. It's two things. If you are in a position where you are hiring talent, you have to hire diversely. And it's the same thing like with founders. You can't just hire in your network. You can't hire your best friends. As much as I love Brown, I don't post on the Brown job board when I'm hiring. I have to post in diverse spaces. Access, then apply, have a real unbiased process, and then see the cream rise to the top. That's how it has to start. Because when you have diverse investors in check writing positions and investment team roles, we find diverse deal flow naturally because we're in diverse networks. We read diverse publications, we go to diverse events. And we continue to empower these founders with the insight of things that may be troubling to them that maybe a white investor may not see. I can be your advocate for you in a way, and you can talk to me about these things and these microaggressions and biases in a way that someone else may not see. So we need more people in my position. That's number one, first and foremost. And it's not about scout programs. It's not about, paid breaking into venture programs. It's about check writing positions. The second thing is if you are a fund of funds or if you are a corporation and you have the ability to do so, you have to start funding diverse fund managers. I know countless of funds that are struggling to fundraise with great Black GPs, and they're struggling, and no one's writing checks into their fund. That's the other thing you can do. You have to give more check writers the checks to do what we do.
That's fantastic. And I guess switching gears a little, what's a startup right now that you're really excited about that you've written a check into yourself, or maybe just one that's on your radar, or any trends that are keeping you up at night?
Ooh, so there's one that I just wrote a check into today, but I don't think I can reveal that to the world yet. I'll give you a hint and say that they are uh, kind of reimagining productivity. They're incredible. But I'll say things that keep me up at night are the future of family, fertility, and reproductive health. Um, Birth rates in this country are declining at a rate that's really unusual for a post-industrialist nation. Not to get too detailed about it, but it's very weird, very strange, and we are having massive issues with um, not even conception, birth in this country. Miscarriage rates are incredibly high, so that's an area that I think about a lot. We have a portfolio company called Prove, which is the first at-home progesterone ovulation test. It's really simple. You pee on a stick, and it tests the strength really of your ovulation and your ability to have an egg actually stick in the uterine lining for you to be able to have a successful pregnancy. So that's something I think about a lot in a company I really like. Another company I'm really excited about is this company called the Home Team, where they are essentially movers on demand. They're expanding into some other realms of kind of help on demand, but they are super great, particularly in the collegiate markets, with helping people move out, especially during COVID, with kind of white glove service on a super cool tech-based platform. So that's what I get really excited about. Health tech in general gets me super excited. CPG, I love, and I'm a super big fan of AI, ML, and computer vision enabled companies as well. Those are my sweet spots.
Amazing, and definitely have lots of new companies I need to research after this call and look into. I love hearing it. Um, So last audience question is, how do you see the future of venture capital and in general, and then also specifically in emerging nations? And they noted particularly as in markets such as Sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia, Indonesia, and Brazil, which are projected to see a majority of global growth over the next few decades.
I think there's going to be a massive move of fund to funds and LPs deploying more capital into those markets. I think you'll see a lot of US-based investors, maybe not necessarily investing in all of those markets, but I think you'll see a lot more M&A activity between American companies in some of the great tech that's being brought out, particularly Brazil. There's some really great things happening in Cuba, Portugal. There's some great things happening in Ghana, Nigeria. I mean, I won't. The list goes on. I think you'll see a lot of M&A activity in these communities by American companies, which is really awesome. Always great to see a great exit in an emerging community.
And then what are some resources as we move to wrap things up here that you would direct students to who want to learn more about any of the industries that you were just talking about, inform themselves to be the best investor or founder they could be, or those things about racial bias and discrimination in startups and VCs? And what resources would you also direct students who are underrepresented founders themselves towards?
So if you are a student looking into getting into my industry or even a startup landscape, HBCU VC is incredible. I can't say it enough. Like, I love the founder. Her name is Hadia. She is incredible. Chelsea, her support chief partnerships. They're building really great programs to help increase access and education to founders as well as new investors emerging coming from the HBCU community. Great. Selfishly, I won an award from them a while ago, but they're building really great things, and we hire interns directly from their pool as well. There's also an international group called Diversity in VC that's doing some really cool things in terms of allowing investors and emerging investors and some existing investors to kind of mentor each other as we work our way up the ladder. And there's some other really great spaces like Women in VC, which is this really great global consortium, over 25,000 people now, I think, where it's women empowering other women in the venture space. Those are, I think, my top 3 resources that I would recommend for people to start, but there's so much more to that. If you're looking for a job, I always recommend people read John Gannon's blog. I don't know how he does it, but he collects kind of this really great list once a week of the best jobs in the VC space and PE that are coming out. So subscribe to that, read that. Also, he also really highly informative content in terms of just his experience in the industry. And just keep reading. Read everything you see. Read things that maybe you wouldn't expect. Read Black Enterprise magazine. There's a really great news source called TP Insights, which is the plug Insights. Really great data-driven news source about what's happening in Black entrepreneurship and Black tech in America right now. So read everything you can.
Thanks so much. And this conversation has definitely been full of lots of tangible resources and information, and also hot takes. And something we like to close all of our interviews at Harvard Ventures with is asking, what is your hottest take? In other words, an opinion you hold that you think might be controversial or that others don't necessarily hold as close as you would.
For sure. First, repeat the last thing I said because I saw the question. John Gannon is his name. John Gannon blog. Google it. And the other one is TP Insights. And so my hot take, and I say this all the time, and I think I'm eventually just going to put it on a t-shirt, is there is no pipeline problem. I'm so sick and tired of hearing other investors telling me they can't find Black or female or Latinx-led deals. Shit, there's plenty of them out here. I have deal flow coming out of my ears, and they're building really great things. People just aren't looking hard enough. So there's no pipeline problem. There are plenty of great deals from diverse founders, and they just need to be seen.
Definitely second that, and thank you so much for sharing. So before we wrap up, is there any, I think that's an awesome note to close on, but any final thoughts or words you'd like to share with our audience?
One thing I always say is I try to be as accessible as possible. I may not email you back the same day, but if you ever want to get in contact with me, send me a message on LinkedIn. Is probably the easiest way, as social media still kind of scares me. And I'm happy to have further discussions with anyone about any of this as you go along your entrepreneurial or investor journey. Good luck.
I wish we could do a proper round of applause with a room full of people, but we'll just do a virtual one. Thank you so much. And thank you again to all of our club partners for Amplify on Harvard and beyond, and to Lola for representing the Morgan State University Society. And I'm dropping in chat once more for everyone the link to our event page where you can find information on donating and staying on the loop, because we have 8 other weeks of amazing events planned, and we really appreciate you all being a part of Amplify.
Woohoo!
Yeah. Yeah, really wishing that physical room so we can give you a round of applause, but echoing that, Alexis, thank you so much for being here and taking time during your vacation to speak with us today.
Anytime. This is what I love to do. So